Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is your weekly microdose of encouragement, inspiration, and miracle grow on your potential as a coach. We've got just a few days before the holiday. Well, here's the reality. Those of you who have kids, the holiday's already begun because now you're like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing about childcare right now and all of that other stuff? So your kids are home or something like that. We're trying to figure out all of those things. I mean, they're letting the kids out a full week before Christmas holiday officially, so that is what it is. But anyway, hey, I just want to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas to every one of you. It's coming up this coming weekend, and I won't get to say it before the weekend rolls around. If you would jump into the chat, you see that here. Yes, I am actually here. I am actually live just a few days before Christmas. Let me say hello to some of the people who are saying hello to me. There's Marilyn, who's joining us from snowy Vancouver. Joan is joining us from Bakersfield. Diane is joining us from South Carolina. Jewel of the South is joining us. So excited. Hey, how's it going? And they're joining us from Houston. Jay is joining us from San Diego. Awesome. Diane saying Merry Christmas. Thank you. There's Sandy, who is joining us from New Jersey. Welcome. Anybody else? If you're just making it into the room, Liz is joining us from Florida. If you're just making it into the room, you haven't missed anything yet. We're just saying hello to everybody. It's always really important for us to connect with you. So jump inside of the chat and say hello to us and tell us where you're joining us from and maybe what you're excited about this week. I mean, obviously, this is the last Mentor Monday before the Christmas holiday. We will still have a Mentor Monday next week, which will be the final one of 2022. So we've got to have something like really planned and exciting and everything else. And we'll expect that that's going to actually take place next week. So by way of introduction for today, and keep those comments coming in as you guys are saying hello and everything else. Keep those things coming in because I'll definitely continue to acknowledge everybody. Obviously, I really appreciate that. So, by way of introduction for what we're talking about tonight, and really what I wanted to finish this year with, because I always try to finish the year really strong with each and every one of you. Sometimes that looks like a series, and definitely we had a series coming into this month and everything else. But honestly, I know that many of you have not tracked with us the entire year. Some of you have tracked with us off and on, maybe for the last couple of years or something like that. And one of the things that I have referred to so many times ever since I first brought this up, I've probably referred to it to our coaches, if not weekly, maybe a couple of times a week. And one of those things that was really mind-blowing, but also heartbreaking, but also reminder of my purpose and why I'm here. Because one of the things that I obviously every week that we come in here and we talk about how you can help your clients. We also talk to you about how you can build your business successfully. Let's put that aside from the standpoint of building a business and being successful as a coach. I know all of that stuff is important. I'm never going to say that that's not important. I want you to thrive in your personal life. But let's get real. Particularly since 2020, over the last 50 years, they have done the research and they have kept a pulse. They have kept track on what is the global happiness, what is the global life satisfaction, and what does that look like? At least the last 50 years, they've really tracked it. And it's had a steady decline for 50 years. Now it has gotten to such a degree of decline that it's actually more likely that you're going to find somebody who is unhappy and dissatisfied with their life more than just being kind of looking at their life as though it's just kind of like average, mediocre, or whatever. And that's a real problem. And I know that over the last, at least 20 years, but increasingly over the last 5 or 10, a lot of times people have thought that, coaching, oh, well, that's a great thing. If you've got extra money, you spend on a coach. That's what a lot of coaches kind of think, that we're just a luxury item. And honestly, we're not a luxury item anymore. Reality is that people are so disconnected, so dissatisfied, and are struggling in their purpose and just struggling in their life in general, that it's a critical need for coaches. And there's not enough coaches for all of the people who really need help, who need people to show up in their life right now. I want to bring this back to the forefront if you missed it the first time. And we're going to, I've actually shortened it a little bit so that we can come back. And if anybody has any questions of me or anything else, I want to put this on the forefront, especially as we're coming into 2023. Why do we do what we do? For those of you who believe that your purpose is actually helping people get breakthrough in their life and come into what their purpose is, I want you to be reminded of why you're here. And if any of you have kind of drifted off of purpose, if you've forgotten what you're here on the planet for, if you've gotten a little bit lazy in terms of putting yourself out there, maybe not even just lazy, if some of you have not put yourself out there because you're like, well, nobody really cares to hear from me, and maybe what I do isn't really that important after all, I want to remind you again of why we're here, why we do what we do. It's more than just our income. It's even more than just helping our family come into what they're made for by being generous and everything else. It's that every one of you, you're here on the planet for a reason. There's a reason why you weren't born 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever. Well, some of you have been born 50 years ago. There's a reason why you weren't living into your purpose 50 years ago, that you're living into your purpose right now, coming into 2023. And I believe that there is a God-given purpose for our life. This is why we're here. It's a reason why we're stepping into this moment. You weren't destined for any other time except for right now, with all of the problems, with all of the challenges, with humanity having great need, is why you're actually here. And so as we look at this, as we have a reminder of what I want to show you is what the research is actually showing us. And also how coaches can step up into this moment and help people live into the kind of lives that they're meant to. Here's the reality. I think that a lot of things are too far gone from the standpoint of, hey, do I believe that things are going to completely change and everything else? No, I think that what happened with 2020 is that people realized that the things that they were doing and the life that they were living was really not cutting it anyway. And so what I say is that life before 2020 not coming back. Life from moving forward. You know why? Because there's some of those things that didn't need to come back, because it wasn't leading people to their purpose and it really wasn't satisfying them in their life anyway. 2020 did something to humanity. And what that means is that people can get back onto their purpose, but they're going to need help, and they're going to need people who will step up into their lives like never before. If friends and family were going to do it, then everybody would already be fixed and everybody would be on point with what they're doing. We need trained people who have a passion and a purpose for helping people break into their destiny. And that's you. If you're here today, I believe that somehow you believe that somehow in your heart or whatever, you're not just here just simply to pay the bills. You're here to leave a mark on the planet, and I'm calling you into that again. So let's do this thing. And I'll be back in just a moment, and we'll talk more about this in just a second. There's a lot of people right now who are living right there. Young people, middle-aged people, and even old people. Like, it's across the board that we're seeing this as a global problem that we're experiencing right now. And some of you as coaches right now are like, oh, well, everything that's going on in the economy and everything that's taking place right now, maybe right now is not the time I should become a coach. Maybe right now is not the time that I should be starting a business. Well, let me say this. If you were selling fine jewelry, if you were selling fancy cars, you had some kind of new high-end service, some kind of new high-end kind of product or whatever that's been kind of untested that people don't really need, I might actually agree with you that right now is probably not the best time to be able to do that. But we're not just simply some high-end service. Coaches are invested in the needs of people and getting them to the next level, helping them get clear, all of these things that are actually in our job description. And so if you will not step in right now with the need that we have, I can't imagine that you ever will. Because this is when our numbers are actually being called. Your numbers being called right now in 2022 beyond, and I'm going to show you like some data and everything else. Listen, this has been decades in the making where we are right now. And your numbers being called right now. You're not just some high-end service that no one needs. You're actually someone who is desperately needed, because it's not just your talent, it's not just your skill, it's not just your ability, it's actually your calling. I'm not somebody who thinks that we live aimless lives that have no purpose. We have a purpose. There's a reason why you weren't born 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 50 years ago. See, some people will say things like, oh, I think that I should have been born in the 30s or the 20s or the 40s. Maybe I missed my time. And that's no, right now is actually when you're desperately needed. There's no mistakes of where you are living right now, what city you live in, the parents you were born to, the city that you live in, the passions that are in your life message, all of those things are critically needed right now. And some of you are actually withholding. Some of you are paying way too much attention to the voices in the media and what other people are saying. And some of you are actually agreeing with those voices, and it's making you withhold the good that you are made to do. And we need to go after this thing. And this is what tonight is really all about. See, the season right now, the season of transition is actually the perfect time to become a coach. And there's a reason why. And this is the reason why. Everybody get a good look at what that is? That's the check engine light. See, the check engine light for many people, now some of you might be a little bit different. When check engine light goes on, some of you might be like, I've got to get this to a mechanic immediately and see what the problem is. But that's not what most people do when they see a check engine light. When most people see a check engine light, they just keep driving their car. And they're like, well, if it's not making any new noises, if it's not doing anything weird, if I can still get from point A to point B, some people will drive with the check engine light on for years. Here's what I want you to understand, that is what people are doing right now in their life. They've been doing it, some of them for years, some of them for decades in their life. And right now, because things have gotten a little bit uncertain, because things have gotten a little bit unpredictable, because we have had the blind leading the blind out there, that what it's done for some people is that it's actually exposed something in them. See, that right now, what people are actually experiencing is really the perfect time to find somebody who needs help, because this is the first time that they're going to respond to the check engine light. The check engine light. It could be, oh, my marriage hasn't been that great, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tolerate it. Why am I going to tolerate a mediocre marriage? Because I've got other things that can kind of distract me to help keep me from paying attention to that pain, paying attention to that red light that's going off in my life. Maybe someone just immerses themselves in their career. Maybe they just buy toys. Maybe they just go on vacations. You know that there's some people, some marriages where people have chosen not what option one, like option one for most of us when we get married, is not, hey, I think that I can build a business with this person, or that maybe we can create a couple of human beings and we can raise them. The number one reason why people get married is because they're absolutely in love with each other, and it usually has nothing to do with money or any of those other kinds of things. It's about a needed connection, and this person saying, I'm looking at this person and I can complete something and we can build a life together. That's what it's always about. And then everything flows out of intimacy. And you know what happens? Whether it's a marriage, whether it's a career, where people will tolerate a career because they're making the money, but they don't really like what they're doing. They gave up on purpose a long time ago. Maybe they're consuming their life in what their kids are doing and they're putting off other things. All of these things, you know what they are? They're the red light. They're the check engine light that's been going on. And here's the thing, is that when the check engine light goes on, what we really have to understand is that people do not seek help when they have the means of numbing all the things that aren't working. Some of you are thinking, well, right now is not a really good time to start a business. Look at what's happening in the economy. Are you kidding me? Do you think that if somebody had $100,000 more in their bank account that they're going to work with you? No, you know what they're going to do with that $100,000? They're going to numb themselves. They're going to pretend that everything is fine. Because that's what we do all the time, particularly as Americans, is we find things to distract us all the time. People don't have relationships that call things out of them. They don't have relationships that confront things. People don't even keep themselves quiet enough to actually hear the cries of their heart. And it's a lot easier for people to just, hey, let me just numb myself out and I'm going to pretend like everything is okay. When the reality is that check engine light has been going on for most people for years, for decades, and that's where they're at right now. See, what we have to understand is that circumstances don't cause unhappiness. They expose it. That's what the check engine light's really about. See, when your car stops and it won't go any further, you already had a warning a long time ago. And you pretended, and you know what? And it usually costs you a greater price because you didn't do something before. This is what's happening in the reality of things right now. You upset something of like, oh, taxes, or this is inconvenience, or whatever. You know what COVID did for everybody? You know what is going on right now where people are like, oh, well, the economy, and politics and politics. You know what it does? Is it exposes what's really going on in here. It's kind of like if I got an orange and I squeezed it. Now, you would expect if I squeeze an orange, that orange juice is going to come out of it, don't you? Wouldn't you expect that? But if I squeeze an orange and apple juice comes out of it, you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You know what happens is that when things squeeze you, it exposes what's really going on below the surface. And most Americans, and I would say most Westerners in general, always find a creative distraction to pretend that they don't want more than what they really want. So this is what happened. Like when COVID happened and then people were stuck home, then they were having to confront the fact that they had some dysfunctional relationships. And you know what? It was making some really crazy crisis nuclear moments in households. Some crazy things started happening. This is what happens. See, because when you are whole in here, when you have beliefs that align and they're not limited, and when we are complete wholeness in there, you know what happens is that you might get squeezed, but you know what happens is that orange juice comes out of you because that's who you really are. See, there's something that's out of alignment between those things because the squeezing should actually bring the best out of you, and we see what really made you. And this is what we've got to confront. Let me show you some things, though. Some of these things that you may not know. And I'm drawing this information from several sources: General Social Survey, the Happiness Project, the Gallup World Poll, the University of Chicago, a study by Oracle. Everything that I'm getting ready to talk to you about is all documented in surveys, and the data is there. I'll let you go and research these sources, and you'll find even more information besides the stuff that I'm getting ready to highlight. See, we see headlines that have come out of all these things, that new data shows Americans more miserable than we've been in half a century. American happiness hits record lows. Americans are the most unhappy they have been in 50 years. This is what's going on. See, what we have to understand is that for the first time in polling history, Americans are more likely to say they're not happy than to say that they are very happy. This is the first time this has ever happened. Now, let me pause for a second because I want to make sure that I sprinkle the good news in because I know some people are coming in late and everything else. What is this telling us? Is that it's telling us that not only is it the right time to become a coach, it's a desperately needed time to become a coach. Because here, I'll say it again. If somebody had their life back to the way that it was before, they're not going to do anything. People do not want change when they can find something that allows them to numb their pain. People only want change when the pain finally gets to a certain threshold and they're willing to do something about it. I've told this story before to our Jumpstart and Boot Camp coaches. I can remember a couple of years ago, I tweaked my back. It was a weird accident that happened. I was carrying this massive cage with guinea pigs. And when I was walking, I tripped over something. There was something in the path, and I tried to keep the guinea pigs from falling, which I successfully did, but I tweaked my back. And what I was thinking as the weeks were progressing, that it was like, oh, this is going to get better. Except it wasn't really getting better. So you know what I did? Is I medicated myself. Like a lot of guys will. We don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to inconvenience myself. I'm not going to take myself away from work or whatever. I'll just pop ibuprofen or whatever I can find until I have to find some things. And it's not just one ibuprofen or two, it's 4. And I'm putting a heating pad on my back. And I got to where even in some of our live boot camps that I was doing, I couldn't stand by the last day. I'm completely having to sit down because my back was so tweaked. And finally, there was one day when I had back spasms, and that was one of the most painful things that I've ever had in my life. And when I had them, that was the moment. I was like, Jessica, you got to get me to urgent care like now. So I went there, got a shot, and for the next 2 weeks, everything was about therapy for my back. Now, I let it go too far, but it wasn't until there was a point of no return when it's like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't have to put up with this. I got to do something. This is what we're talking about. This is why we want to step into the moment. There's no greater time because there's no greater need. And it's the first time that people are starting to come to terms with the fact that, you know what? Oh, you know what? There was a check engine light on years ago and I didn't address it. I'm willing to address it now. It's going to be about the first time that many of these people will address the things that are not working in their life. See, in this Oracle life satisfaction study, is that here's some of the things that they found is that 27% said they couldn't even remember what it meant to be truly happy. This is a fresh survey. 45% of the people said it had been more than 2 years since they last experienced happiness. Here's another thing that they said. Half of the people they surveyed said that they had been more unhappy in the past year than any other year before. We have to understand this. This isn't just a COVID thing. These statistics have been drastically dropping for decades. This is a lot of the stats and everything else we're being tracked pre-COVID of how bad the happiness. You would think that we'd have more reasons to be happy. We have more accessibility to a lot of things, especially for Americans. Like everybody can get health care. There's a lot of things that have come during our lifetime that we've all benefited from. But what we have to understand is that there's something incongruent with what's going on in here and everything out here. Doesn't matter really what we give people or take away from people. We can't run away from ourselves. And we can't run away from the fact that there's a check engine light that's going on that's being unaddressed. Another big drop, and this is in direct proportion. Why are people so unhappy? One of those huge factors is human connection. And Americans have reported that they are twice as likely, this is a drastic increase, twice as likely to say that they sometimes or often have felt a lack of companionship. That's went up from 27% to 45%. And that they felt left out has went up from 18% to 37%. I'm going to ask a question. And I want you guys, and I know I'm 30 seconds ahead of you. And what I want to ask you is, what do you believe the weekly average number of hours that Americans spend in social situations with friends and family? I want you to throw that in the comments because I want to see where you think that we're at. Now we've got 180 hours out of a week. Is that right? 24 times 7 is 8, 7 28. It's about what? Is that 100 hours? Like, what is that? 24 times 7? I don't know. I can't do the math in my head that quickly. If you had 12 hours in a day in 7 weeks, what's in 7 days? What's that? That's 63. So what do we got? About 126 hours, something like that. So what do you think the average number of hours that Americans spend connecting with friends and family socially? I want you guys to throw in there. Jasmine says 3. Bart says 3 to 5. Oh, and Lynn gave me the right number. 168 hours that people could be spending with people. Teresa says 20. What else do you guys say? Bobby says 14. Stacy says 15. Shomer says 50. Jennifer says my guess is 5. Diane says 2 hours a day, which would be 14 a week. And of course, we're saying not counting social media. Bill says 20. Irene says 25. Bill says 20. Lynn says about 4. Clarissa says 20. And Melissa says 5. Okay, so let me show you what that actual number is. The actual number for Americans is 5.5 hours. 5.5 hours that the average American spends, and that is declining. You would think that COVID had fixed that. It's declining about another half an hour. So this is where we are at right now, 5.5 hours. Now, one of the key factors in happiness, in life satisfaction, is in human connection. And you have to guess that out of 5.5 hours with friends and family, how many of those things have to do with purpose? How many of those things have to do with the future? How many of those things have to do with confronting limiting beliefs? How many of these things have to do with transformation in someone's life? Very little. You can probably imagine that out of 5.5 hours, most people are probably allowing you to stay exactly where you are, talking about the same things that everybody else is talking about, small talk, drinking beers. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that you only have 5.5 hours. So if we're only having small talk, if we're only drinking beers, if we're never talking about purpose, if we're never talking about the real fulfillment in life, then there's no question this is a major reason why people are experiencing such a great level of unhappiness in their life, why there's such little satisfaction. Because I talked about the fog earlier. When you have a check engine light and you're in a fog, this is where most people are. And they're hanging out the only 5.5 hours that they get with people who are in the fog, who just feel like I have no control in my life. I'm just a pawn of the government and my political party and the taxes and all of the other stuff that people complain about. This is where most people are living right now. This is why. Right now. Not when people get their happiness back, because it's not coming back. Not how people get happiness up to now. Not the way that they are defining happiness right now. That ain't coming back. This is why we've got to step into the frenzy, into the middle of all of these things, that you've got to quit withholding yourself. You got to quit talking like everybody else is talking. You got to quit talking and reading things about the economy, because here's what makes you relevant right now. You know what makes a business relevant? You know what makes a business economy proof? If they are serving a specific pain point. That's what makes you economy proof. If you can address a need, people will always buy it. This is what we're talking about, is the need. You know, besides connection, one of those really big ones that we're understanding more and more is the connection between life purpose. I want you to look ahead with me at 2050. Did you know that there is a direct link between Alzheimer's and the lack of purpose? I don't know if you know this or not. What we're talking about is that they are expecting Alzheimer's to triple by the time 2050 rolls around. Now, I know there's environmental factors. I know that there are genetic factors and there's things like that. But it is undeniable proof in all of the research that purpose is one of the big links to someone consistently having brain health and everything else. We can say emotional connection, people, but we're also talking about purpose. Now, this is what we're looking forward to if we don't do something, if we don't address these things. Because one thing that I can say for certain, I don't know if you're paying attention to the pain points. The pain points are actually, and this is why I want you to be encouraged. The pain points, you have to get to a pain point. You have to get to a death to have a resurrection. You have to sometimes have back against the wall before you will fight. Sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they can't go down any further, and they're going to be honest about where they are in their life, and they're going to look for help, and they're going to seek people. See, what we have to understand is that if we actually pay attention to what the pain points are, it is the making of transformation. See, what Uber and why am I talking about business? I'm talking about Uber, and when we look at Airbnb and these different businesses that came out in the last recession, you know what they did is that they recognized a need, and there was a service that came out of a need. And now they are the largest taxi chain. They are the largest hotel chains in the entire world. Why is that? Because they addressed a need in a certain time. And you know what? They haven't not only not gone out of business, but they have thrived, and they've created a completely different niche that we didn't think. Listen, when that all happened, when those businesses came to fruition, can you imagine just right before 2007, telling your mom you're going to get a ride with somebody that you don't know, you're going to get in their back seat. You're going to share a room. You're going to rent a room from someone that you don't know. Well, and your mom's going to be like, what do you mean? You can't rent a room. It's dangerous. Well, it's okay. I got it on the internet. Sounds like even worse. It sounds like a horror story. No, it was a business that came out of a need. See, this is what we have to understand. Why do companies, why do businesses understand this? And some of us and coaches, knowing if you have half a pulse on anything that's going on in the world, why would we ever think that what we have to offer right now would not be the most relevant thing? Because things are a little bit tighter for some people? Because gas prices are a little bit higher? I mean, like, seriously, are we paying any attention? Are we watching the same things? Or are we just listening to the same voices that everybody else is listening to and saying, well, you know what? It's just a bad time right now. My coaching practice was birthed in many cases out of necessity because of the last recession. And I probably thought some of the same things that everybody else is talking, like conventional wisdom. Oh, that's counterintuitive, except it's not conventional wisdom if you're doing what everybody else is doing. If you're doing what everybody else is doing and working with conventional wisdom, it explains why sometimes our life doesn't look that much different than somebody else's. We've got to think differently. We got to believe differently. We've got to see different things. We got to live by faith sometimes. And faith means it's kind of like being an artist. The painting lives up here and nobody else sees it until we put it on a canvas. And now the world enjoys it, but it already existed in here, in the heart of that artist. This is who we've got to be able to bring change and transformation. So here's some of the pain points that we should be paying attention to that are the makings of transformation. People are less connected than they ever have been, despite the devices and despite all the stuff. What made people happy, and this is another survey point, what made people happy before no longer makes them happy. You know what that's birth of? That's a seed that's a possible for a transformation. When you realize that how you're living your life is not making you happy, the things that used to make you happy are making you come to the grips with the reality that this doesn't really make you. This doesn't really make your life. It's not making you happy. So you know what that means is that people are ready to do something different. See, people are less certain than they ever have been. People are less motivated than they ever have been. People have less sense of self than they ever have. I mean, are you paying attention? Do you see all these people with identity crisis going on right now? That's one of the biggest crises that we have going on right now, where people have no sense of self. They don't know who they are. They don't know very much about themselves. And there's tons of information in the world. There's tons of people on Instagram talking about it. There's tons of people on YouTube trying to inform them. Their own schools are trying to inform them. You know what they're lacking? They're lacking human connection and somebody who can actually walk them through this process. Because you know what we started doing even with millennials? We extended their adolescence up until their 20s. Like most of us who are almost 50 years old walked out by the time we were 18, most millennials were finally doing in their 20s. And we're seeing all of these things getting pushed out farther and farther because people haven't processed and they're processing less and they're less connected. And I don't care what generation you're a part of. I don't care what state you live in. I thought California was the one that had the problem when I got here. And I'm like, man, people don't return texts. They no show, and I'm like, what is going on out here? But the reality is that I'm finding that universally the truth, that people seem to not inconvenience themselves for relationships. And you know what that means? It means that if you'll show up in someone's life, you can be one of the most significant relationships. And listen, it doesn't even have to be a long-term relationship, and you'll see transformation in someone's life. See, people are completely clueless right now about their future. People have lost their why, and people have little or no sense of purpose. Pay attention to these things. Listen to the things that people say. You can find the undertones of every one of these things that I'm talking about and even more. Why aren't we talking about these things? Nobody wants to live their best life. You know what they want? They want these things. They want relationship. They want connection. They want purpose. They want all these things. Why aren't we talking about this stuff? Why are we withholding? Why won't you put that post on social media? Why won't you go and finish your certification? Why won't you put yourself out there? The world has never been in more desperate need in your lifetime. Decades it has been in movement towards this critical time. And if you won't step up now, I can't imagine that anybody's going to step up in your place. And this is why you're needed. See, the catalyst for transformation, and people who have gone through boot camp have heard me teach about this. Every change that you can see in your life has usually had these two components. It was a pivotal life experience, and it was a significant relationship. Sometimes it was a life or death situation. Sometimes it was a move, a marriage, a divorce, a death, a birth, all kinds of different things. Graduating, all kinds of different things. Change jobs, all of that stuff. In many cases, those were pivotal life experiences. Right now, we're actually on one right now, where while we're sitting around, well, I don't know if the timing's really good. The timing's now, because this is a pivotal life experience. What are people going to be after this? Who are they going to become after this? Or are they going to persist and pretend that happiness is going to come to their doorstep? Or are they going to redefine happiness for their life and take charge? It takes a coach taking charge of your life, taking charge of your destination. I don't care about your fear. I don't care about your personality type. You make your personality type and your fear submit to your purpose, because you're called for more than this. Quit living small. Quit playing small. Quit playing a small game when you're called in 2022 to do something to change the world and to bring the high water mark up for people. You know that there are people whose story will not resolve because you won't resolve your story. I'm calling you today, resolve your story, because the world's waiting on that right now. You want to see the world change? It ain't going to change when the next person's elected. I'm sorry. Nobody's going to get happy because their president got elected. Nobody's going to get happy because they're making more money, because they got a different job. They got a bigger and better house. Those aren't the core issues that are going on. They're numbing mechanisms. What it takes is your story resolving, because coaching provides both of these things: a pivotal life experience and a significant relationship. You know, I want to show you how easy it is to make a transformative connection, because what I said earlier is that Americans spend an average of 5.5 hours a week connecting with friends and family. And like I said earlier, let's face it, those relationships are not pushing them towards their future. It's clear. If it was pushing them towards their future, they'd be doing something different, but they're not, because their friend groups and their inspiration doesn't really change that much. Here's what I want you to understand. Look at this with me. A weekly coaching session of 1 hour increases connection in an individual's life by 20%, and that is rich connection. Do you understand how the math works? People are right now spending 5.5 hours. You can either take one of those 5.5 hours, or you can add, which I would love, instead of subtracting, let's add an hour. Let's move them from 5.5 hours of connection to 6.5 hours of connection. But this is going to be the most dynamic, transformative, catalytic hour of their week. You can change people's life because I can take a bigger portion. I can actually take a significant part. Listen, you're actually going to be more influential than their mom, their dad, their siblings. Right now in this stage in life, not that those people won't still be influential, not that their best friend won't be influential, but what I'm saying is that you're carving out a bigger piece of their time than they're going to be spending with anyone. And it's rich conversation. It's confronting the limiting beliefs. It's giving people their power back. It's giving people permission to make those changes, to actually confront the check engine light that they haven't confronted in all these years. This is what we get to do. Now, let me say this about the check engine light as well, just so that there's no confusion on this. I'm not talking about broken people who need therapy and counseling. Let those people go there. What I am saying is that even though we have 60% of people who are unsatisfied with their lives just by the survey, like seriously unsatisfied and unhappy with their life, these are not a bunch of people who need counseling and therapy. They need purpose. They need connection. They need people who will actually structure a relationship and help push them forward and get them out of the fog till they can see due north and to call them higher again. These are regular people who are right now need your help, and we need to help them. So let me give you a final thought on this. 2 things. One is don't fall for the fact. Don't fall for this idea that I start when the economy gets better and people have more money, or so-and-so's elected, or our taxes drop and gas prices drop. Because the lie, if you get deceived by that, don't be deceived by that. Don't be deceived like a lot of people are, and they're like, well, I'll be happy when so-and-so gets elected, or when so-and-so isn't in office anymore or whatever. That's bullcrap. They're fooling themselves. Listen, happiness is an inside job. Do we understand that? It doesn't matter what you add or subtract or anything else in life, because happiness is not circumstantial. But we've been leaving our happiness and we've been leaving our joy and everything else on everything else, life satisfaction on everything else. This is a recalibration that people have to have. And so don't be fooled, because happiness will not return when circumstances change. It will come when people view themselves and they view their circumstances differently. See, you have to have, right now, some of you need a lens change. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to be confident. You're not going to be bold. You're not going to be any of these things that you want to be living purposefully. Some of you know your purpose. That's got to be the biggest killer in your life. To know your purpose is to go and transform lives, and you're playing it safe, and you're living in fear, and you're living a thankless job or whatever. What you've got to tell yourself is that, hey, when my lens changes about myself and my circumstances, that's when everything changes. It's hard to call people to that if we're not living that. And I'm challenging you to live that. Here's another thing that I want to give you as we're closing. If your calling is to be a coach, it means you must quit thinking like the status quo, and you've got to quit enabling limited thinking. And the last thing that I'm going to say is this. Listen, it's not the evil that you are doing in your life that's your problem. Because most of you are really great, amazing human beings. Evil's not your problem. You know what your problem is? It's the good that you won't do. It's the fact that some of you have good that you are called to do in your life and on the planet right now, and you're withholding it. You're just failing to do it. That's probably the greater, if we want to use the word evil in our life, is that we're just withholding our calling. We're withholding our purpose. And I'm calling you back to that. Listen, I'm giving my life to all of this all over again. Because my whole life, my entire adult life, has all been about helping people get breakthrough and get to the next level. That's what it's about. It's about the coaches. I love the coaches that I work with inside of Life Coach Training Institute. But I love humanity. I love people out there. And I love people so much that I invest highly and heavily into coaches, because I can't just go and change the world all by myself. Listen, if I could, I'd go and do that. But I do change the world through each and every one of you. That's my calling. That's my purpose. I don't know anything else that I can do to prompt you and encourage you to go out and do it, except this. You got to get out there. You got to go out and make this happen. I understand. It's going to be afraid. Some of you you can't wait until the day that the fear ends. Sometimes you got to process and walk through the fear, walk through the fire, walk through the flood, and know this. If you walk with us, you won't do it alone. That's the one guarantee that I can give you, is that we're all about connection. Yes, we're an online school, all that other stuff. You should see all of the connecting points that we give our students every week, that you'll never do this thing alone. When you go through the fire, when you go through the flood, because it's inevitable, it's going to happen, you won't do it alone. And that's the one guarantee that we will make to you that maybe not everybody else will make for you. There's a lot of people right now who are living. Encouraging for every one of you tonight as a reminder of finishing up this year. I also want to remind you guys as well, if you have not gotten trained and certified as a coach, I want to welcome you into allowing us to take you by the hand and do this thing. Listen, 2023 is basically here. We're just a couple of weeks away from it, realistically. I mean, it's here, right? Now, I understand if you are finishing out this year, you've been feeling purpose burning in you for quite a while, but you haven't done anything about it. Well, this is your call, because there are no mistakes. I ran into a person yesterday. I was in this, there was something that just drew me to this person. We end up having this dynamic conversation, and he looks at me, he says, there's no coincidences. I wasn't supposed to be here today, but I realized that I did come here, and today it was to meet you. There's some people who actually understand that where they walk, that there's actual purpose and intention, that we're not just flying around by the seat of our pants with no purpose and nothing behind it. I think that there's a driving force. And sometimes we got to understand is that even to you today, with what you heard, if there was anything stirring in you, then that means that there was something that resonated with truth inside you, and you're the only one who can respond to it. Now, I know that some of you won't, Because if you don't respond really in the next like 24 hours, and this is what I always see with just clients and everything else, it's what I teach my coaches. If people don't respond to what is happening in their heart in the moment, because we have to respond when we're stirred. No one changes their life when they're not stirred. No one takes bold steps unless they are stirred. If you're stirred, I'm telling you that means that this is resonating and it's what you're called to. There's no mistaking in it. If you see something bigger than yourself rising up, something that is not just your physical body or whatever, but there's something that's rising up in your spirit, then that means, hey, you need to do this thing. And it's not going to go away. Every now and then you'll watch a movie, you'll hear somebody say something and you'll feel that thing that's stirred. But at a certain point, if we don't do something when it's stirred, then it's that much more that we'll end up numbing ourselves. We'll end up callousing our own hearts, and we'll never respond to it. So respond to it. How do you do that? Well, with us, if you want to walk with us, and that means probably the best program that I could offer for you is a Jumpstart program, because it includes training, it includes certification. Every one of our programs is self-paced, but it also has live elements in everything that we do. Our life coach certification course, which is actually part of our Jumpstart program, and Jumpstart's only $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. That's not going to really set you back. I know there's programs that charge you thousands of dollars, but what we've strived to be is an affordable program that's for busy people who have real lives and are working full-time jobs in most cases. Tuesday nights is when we do our live training, and it is live and online at 5 p.m. Now, we're off this week, and we're not going to come back until after the first of the year, but every one of these sessions is rolling, and you also have access to every one of these sessions through the self-paced program. Whenever you log into the course, you can go through every one of these sessions. We also include live coaching demos. If you've never seen coaching before, then you get to practice it live or observe other people doing it. And there's live Q&As at the end of each one of these sessions every week. Now, again, all of this stuff is self-paced, so that you can go through it at your own pace, on your own schedule, or you can watch the replays later or whatever. If you're a part of Jumpstart, you also get access to our live weekend boot camp. Basically, what we do is we take all of those 7 sessions in a weekend, and we go Friday night all the way to Sunday, and you can knock all of your training out in a single weekend. That, again, is coming up 3 weeks into January. If you join Jumpstart for $97 a month, you get boot camp included. Now, both of those courses can be paid for separately, but I'm offering you the best deal that I possibly can, because if you go with Jumpstart, then you literally get everything that we offer. You also get Brand Camp, because we're all about not only you learning coaching skills, but we want to see you thrive as a business person. Brand Camp takes you 13 hours from the very beginning, discovering your niche and also developing your website. How do you write an email? How do you write a sales page? How do you create a lead magnet? How do you create a sales funnel? How do you actually do email marketing? All of these things, search engine optimization. If we just said search engine optimization by itself, that's thousands of dollars, what we give you in this course alone. And it's inside of your student dashboard as soon as you enroll. We also give you the coaching product launch blueprint. It's 8 hours. I should say it's 8 sessions, and it's 10 hours of walkthrough from zero to launch. If you don't know even who you're going to work with, or even how to put your business out there or anything else, we literally take you from zero from brainstorming step by step. How do you launch coaching products? Because one of the things that I said last week was that you need to learn how to maximize yourself and maximize your business so that you can help more people. It's not just about one-on-one clients, that we can find a lot of different ways, whether it's group coaching or creating an online course or webinars or whatever. All of those things actually apply within this formula. Again, Jumpstart is $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. That means you get the life coach certification course, you get Tuesday night live training, you get Wednesday group coaching call, which is live with all of our Jumpstart coaches. And what do we do during that time? We always celebrate wins, and we also give people feedback on whatever it is that wherever they're struggling, wherever there's a pain point, wherever there's a difficulty, or if they just want feedback on something that they're working on. The people who are in that program celebrate one another. They're the most amazing, brilliant people in the world who are not in competition with you, that everybody is trying to figure out, how do we celebrate one another? How do we support one another and put our best foot forward? And so brilliant people, some who have already become 6-figure coaches since the beginning of the year. those are people that you have access to in addition to me inside of this program. You can get enrolled in about 90 seconds. You can get rolling on things. Some of you don't have tons left to do. You got your shopping out of the way and everything else. You can actually make some major headway into getting your program, getting your own business launched by January. $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment, or you can stick around and you can continue working with us. But we want to take you by the hand. Yes, we are an online school, and that does allow us to be more affordable than other programs. But one thing that you need to know is that we've been really successful at building businesses besides just teaching people how to coach people. And I'm inviting you to come and be a part of this. I'm going to look on the chat. Does anybody have any questions or anything else? Joan says, so powerful and a great reminder to stop thinking small. People need us. Haley's giving us some love over there. I appreciate that. Hey, do me a huge favor. Like this post and share it. I believe that even what we talked about tonight can really help a lot of people. Even if they're not in coaching, it might really benefit a lot of people. And so do us a favor, like it, share it. It tells Facebook and YouTube that we are doing a good job. Listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great holiday weekend. Embrace your family. Don't eat too much. Well, at least have a plan if you do eat too much, like an immediate plan after. If you have not gotten your training and certification out of the way in business or even your business developed, let us take you by the hand and help you do that this year. When I say this year, I mean for next year, but starting now, $97 a month. Maybe this is your Christmas gift to yourself, is to quit putting your purpose off. Let's go change the world, folks. This is what we're made to do. Let's go do it. Look for the people. Listen, when you know that 60% of people are unhappy, then it means that when we walk out the door today, you should be able to find all kinds of people who you could help. And so go do that. Go share your gift to the world. Listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week and take care.